Morning everyone, welcome to another science stream, and today I am really excited because not only are we going to be covering dinosaurs and movies because, dinosaurs, that's already awesome enough, but I have a very special guest to do it with. So welcome to BrainBug, because I couldn't do this on my own. I mean, I'm a physicist, so this is like biology to a physicist here. So how are you going?
Oh, things are going great. Just had my stream earlier this morning and was shouting out this for tonight, saying that because it's tonight here on this side of the planet, it's good morning over there, it's good evening over here. So so I was shouting this out. So hopefully some folks show up to give us some love and support as we look at these dinosaurs in movies and in fiction, obviously. Well, I don't know. Do you want to stick to fiction, or are we going to talk about some walking with dinosaurs and stuff like that?
Oh, we could bring up something like a Liopleurodon, because anyone in the chat who knows walking with dinosaurs will know what we're talking about. If not, then if we have time, we'll get to it, and you won't regret it, because let's just say that for a documentary, they kind of exaggerated just a little bit.
They aren't the only ones exaggerating those marine reptiles, though, but we'll get to that when we get into the movies, huh?
Yes. Though, one of the things I'm expecting is that a lot of them are going to call things dinosaurs or have things that are not actually dinosaurs as dinosaurs.
Right. Dinosaurs are defined as anything that is shared a common ancestor between a barn sparrow and a triceratops. So anything that shares a common ancestor going back between those two clades is a dinosaur. Then you have the group that the dinosaurs are in. It's called archosaurs. Now in archosaurs, you have your dinosaurs, which includes birds, modern birds. That's why when you talk about dinosaurs, you say non-avian dinosaurs, because all the living ones today are birds, and we know they survived the extinction event that ended the Mesozoic. So, yeah, and but then you got your archosaurs, and then outside of that group, you have other reptiles of the early Mesozoic that really didn't make it through to the end. You got your marine reptiles like your plesiosaurs, your ichthyosaurs, your mosasaurs, and then you have the pterosaurs, the winged reptiles that
the giant Asdarchids are my favorite, though.
The Cretaceous, they got pterosaurs got crazy in the Cretaceous. They did good competing with dinosaurs. They really did. Some of the depictions of them, we'll include those in this topic too, because people, the way that they're depicted is in media up until fairly recently, and you still, when you go to buy dinosaur toys, they'll have the pterosaurs that stand up and are standing like this on their hind legs, and that's just not how they would have stood at all.
Yeah, well, from my understanding, dinosaurs are diapsids, so they have to have the extra holes in their skull, plus their feet have to be directly below them. So anything with the feet out to the side is not a dinosaur. Is that also correct?
Right. Well, so you have this other clade of reptiles, the Lepidosaurs, which includes modern snakes and lizards, and they carry their legs out to the side. So they are diapsids too. So they have the two holes in their heads. So do pterosaurs and the marine reptiles that we were talking about. But to be the dinosaurs, to fit into that clade, it is all about how the pelvic girdle is shaped and where the legs are positioned that separate them from other archosaurs. Crocodiles have sort of an intermediate between that reptile and or reptilian gait where they're out to the side, and then the high walking gait where the legs are underneath. So, and you can see them make that transition when they're walking and when they hustle. When they're walking
dinosaurs running. Sorry, crocodiles running. When you see them like almost bounding along, it's hilarious.
Gallop. Yeah,
they can gallop. And you're just like, okay, so they can chase me down on land as well.
Alligators, like you see them walking across the golf courses down in Florida doing their high walking, and it looks like a freaking horse out there, just massive. And I know I saw this one video, and there was actual dinosaurs in the video too, because there were these geese putting their wings out and just herding this huge monster of an alligator across the golf course, trying to keep it away from their eggs. They were just spreading their wings out and made a line for it to follow along. And the alligator was respectful though. So dinosaurs are smart.
Yeah, they are. I mean, because I've got a lot of birds that live around here. We don't have any crocodiles or alligators here. Well, if you go further north, you get plenty of crocodiles, some nice large ones, though they are definitely not dinosaurs. Though the dinosaurs in our backyard are mainly magpies and kookaburras, and they're intelligent in different ways. But the magpies, I think, being the same family as crows and ravens, are very, very clever. Yeah. There's one that I occasionally feed if we're barbecuing or something. He'll get the scraps, and I can almost communicate with him. Like, he's smart enough that we can indicate what we want to each other. It's really, really cool. So yeah, I do like that. But just to fill people in, what we're going to do today, once we get through kind of chatting a bit about dinosaurs, is I've got images, so stills and pictures from various movies and TV shows. And we're going to go through them and have a look at how the dinosaurs are depicted. And we're going to discuss what should they actually look like, or at least whether these movies and TV shows got them correct. Plus, after that, we will obviously take suggestions. If you have a movie or TV show that you want, I will give you time. You can pop that in the chat, and then we can bring up and have a look at a few photos of that. And if I can find them, which I should, because they're on file, I also have a couple of more modern renderings of some of these dinosaurs to show after that, just so everyone gets to see exactly what they actually should look like, or close to, whether the exact coloring has been figured out or not. Though we have figured it out for a few of them. And I do know the ankylosaurs, which are the ones with the club tail. We did find one that was well enough preserved to get shading, even if we didn't get the color. Right. That was a cool find.
And there's,
but yeah,
some of the ones with feathers we can. Well, I think you talked about it on one of your science streams, didn't you? That the feathers we've been able to trace the pigments and know, that this dinosaur had iridescent black feathers. It was really cool to be able to find something like that.
That was the second one that we ever figured out, was this little black colored one about the size of a chicken. But there was one earlier than that. I know it started with S, but I'll have to check the name again. But it was a small, like fox-sized, almost fox-like dinosaur that had a kind of orange and then a stripy tail. It was like red and orange bands. It's some of these things we figured out. Really,
there's some good reconstructions of it. Yeah, they give it kind of like this. It was squirrel size too, so they give it this like squirrel-like quality that really fits with its body plan, covered with this soft down feather. They weren't quite having the rigid feathers at this time. It was like almost like advanced pycnofibers moving towards feathers, and we're probably going to talk a lot about pycnofibers as we move along too.
Yeah, even the local the Sydney Museum, the Australian Museum here in the CBD. If you go further in, their T-Rex display has been there for years. I remember going there as a child, so it was before. Because the feather understanding, the fluffiness is fairly recent, so it was before that. They've actually gone and it's not fluffy, but they've added a few spikes to it just to show that some dinosaurs had feathers, and you can see that they've changed some of theirs. And what I find really it's just a nice coincidence, is that the kind of bird display with like the cabinets, all the different birds in it, is next to the dinosaur display. So you walk from one exhibit to the other, and it's like, oh, I kind of like that, because look, it's dinosaurs, 2 more modern dinosaurs.
Right, and that's where they should be. Like if they're in a zoo together, they'd be in the same vicinity to each other.
Yeah.
I guess as much as, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we're ready to, or at least I'm ready to get going. Is there anything you want to add? Any guesses? Further guesses as to what we might see before? Although
Okay,
I think you know.
I have a prediction I'm going to make. Okay, so anything that we look at from the talkies era through the golden era of film is going to have a lot of Charles Knight interpretations of how the dinosaurs look, stand, and their posture, and even their motion. It's going to be based on Charles Knight paintings. Are you familiar with Charles Knight?
Not super, but I'm definitely going to be looking those up in the background to have a. I think I know the sort of depiction though that you're talking about, but that'll be interesting. However, I think what we should do is start with one of the older ones, which was your suggestion actually, and so let me just keep an eye on the comments as well. So here we go. The Valley of Guanji, is that it?
Guanji, yes.
Guanji, there we go. I was looking at some of these images. I'm like, I've got to see this. This looks really, really interesting.
Yes, it's like spaghetti Western style cinematography in this movie. Did you watch the clips of it?
With purple dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm. There's an elephant. Guanji, this individual we see right here, battles an elephant at the climax of the film. It basically runs the King Kong storyline is what it is. They find a hidden valley with prehistoric animals in it. There's our friend here that we see in the cage and some other creatures as well, but they capture this one to bring it home for to basically display at a rodeo like they did with King Kong, bringing him back to New York. But they bring this guy to a Coliseum style battle, and he breaks loose, and and you kind of get where that goes with relation to King Kong.
Yeah. Well, the immediate thing that comes to mind when you mention fighting an elephant is that dinosaurs for the same size as a mammal are stronger, lighter, faster, and more efficient. So they're fitter and can go for longer. So this idea that, say, a mammoth or a T-Rex can have a fight, or an elephant and a T-Rex or some kind of large raptor can have a fight, it would be very one-sided in reality if it somehow ever did occur. And that's why mammals up until the end of the Cretaceous were always so small. Well, they're a bit bigger than we originally thought, but they're relatively small, is because that's the only region where being more dense and heavier actually is an advantage, because it means you can muscle and physically push your way around a little more, or at least that's my understanding of it. So a fight between a T-Rex and an elephant be over very quickly.
Yeah, and there's been the weight on a T-Rex has been hotly disputed throughout since it was discovered in 1911. It's been up and down, everywhere between. I think it's been everywhere between 7 tons and 20 tons. Those are, I'm not using metric tons though, so I don't know the conversions on that. Sorry,
I think they're fairly similar anyway. And particularly if it came from scientific literature, it's going to be in metric anyway.
Well, it came from. I had a book about the history of dinosaur depictions, so I don't know if if that would be as accurate as science papers on it. So I haven't actually. I don't have any. I'm not citing any papers, so don't hold me to it. I'm citing film history documents.
But don't worry, we're covering film and TV here today, so hopefully everyone can forgive us for not pulling out the full references and citations for this one. But before you actually go full technical on it, because I just want to have a go at what I think is wrong with this, and you can correct me on what I don't all get. The first thing that apart from just the ridiculous color of it, which I'll come back to in a moment, because that is something I do have some expertise in, is its posture. It's would never have stood like that. It's like they've kind of grabbed it and crinkled it up a little bit. It should be standing a bit flatter, but also its neck and back should be straight. It shouldn't have any as much curve to it like that. Particularly the head shouldn't be up back like this. It should be a little more forward. And the arms actually are not horrid for like a little model like that. But as I said, I would come back to the color. Purple and blue colors for things in nature as a natural color is incredibly rare. Almost nothing has it. So although we don't 100% know the color of T-Rex, which I'm assuming this is meant to be because I'm not sure what else they'd be going for. I know there's plenty of other creatures that it could be, but in terms of a movie, it's probably a T-Rex. There's no way they would have been purple or blue because there's so few creatures, and most of them it's not because they're naturally blue, but it's the coverings they've got basically refract or do something really cool with the light to make it look blue. Because blue and purple dyes are almost never seen. You have very few examples, which is why, incidentally, no country flags currently have purple on them, and the few in history have been few and far between. Purple is a hard color, so that's the other one. It stands out. It's pretty cool. They definitely wouldn't have been purple.
Right. Now, another thing about Guanji here is that I'm not sure of his pedigree because he's got 3 fingers. T-Rex would only have the 2. Yeah.
I mean, at least they kind of got them round the right way, rather, because some people have them with the hands facing down, but they should be. Oh, it's a technical term for it when they should be facing in.
Pronated.
They can't actually. Sorry.
They should be pronated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should be.
Yeah.
They're not. I mean, they're probably a little curved, but it's not too bad for an older depiction of them.
Yeah. Dinosaurs, that's another theropods, that's a distinction of their physiology, is that their shoulders go backwards and forward like this. They don't have as much rotation as we have. That's why dinosaurs they couldn't pronate their hands like forward to grab things like this. Their palms together is how they would look. And we're going to see over and over again, all the way up into the modern era, dinosaurs depicted with their hands facing down. And Guanji, I want to give them props on this. The hands are facing together, palms together. So I'm actually impressed.
They can't quite clap, but they look like they're going to.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because the T-Rex arms, they get smaller, and you can watch in the kind of Tyrannosaur lineage. But then they get to a certain size where they don't keep shrinking, whereas other clades, you do see that. So there's been a bit of speculation in the literature as to why didn't the hands kind of disappear entirely. So they probably were using them for something. But yeah, 2 fingers and Ian. So yes, he's got 3 fingers, but oh well. It's not the only one. I'm sorry,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna. Where's my? Yeah, this was the other one of him. I just wanted the other view.
Right. Now, the shape of the skull. Obviously, they were, this was 1969, right? So this was, before the dinosaur revolution, when they started depicting them with the more vertical stance and posture. But even in an upright stance like this, with its head craned up, and this is not to say that allosaurs, I'm going to assume it's an allosaurs, couldn't crane their heads back like this to observe their surroundings. But they wouldn't have had that. That would not have been their natural position to have their heads up like this. Their spine wouldn't connect from underneath. It would connect from the back. Their spine and their neck would connect from the back of the head, still not underneath like a human's or kangaroos for that matter, because that's what Guanji stands like, a kangaroo. He walks. He drags his tail. His tail is very serpentine and squirms all about when he's being active. And that's the stop motion, of course, too, gives it that kind of wild, chaotic kind of shaking to it. But sorry, my dog's barking.
That's all right. Yeah, because that's something that dinosaurs, when they walked, is that they probably didn't drag tails at all.
No.
They would have, because they would have had quite a flat posture. The tail and the head would have were fairly well balanced.
Yeah, the tail's counterbalanced to the whole upper torso, so yeah, they weren't.
But here's an interesting thing, because we're going to probably come back to it in some of the later ones. Is a lot of depictions of T-Rex show them not having lips, and that might sound a bit weird to most people, but it's not lips like ours that we can move. It's more like a lizard. Think about when you come across a lizard in your yard, and we have the water dragons around Sydney and occasionally a blue tongue, and the water dragons are everywhere. You go for a walk and you'll see half a dozen of them easily, particularly if it's a warm day like today. You don't see their teeth when their mouth is closed. And there is actually a really good argument that T-Rex probably had the same, whereas I've never seen that as a depiction in the movies, because they love showing the fierce teeth even before they open the mouth, which I just thought that was another little curious aspect. I can't remember now if they did that here, but
as far as the facial structure in general, the modern, a lot of dinosaurs did have beaks. They did have beaks and just molars, like the ceratopsians. They had beaks. Stegosaurs had beaks, but
they had some of the hadrosaurs that did as well, didn't they?
Yeah, very analogous with modern beaks. Anyhow, and we see in modern depictions of theropods, usually they have no feathers on their face. They got kind of the same way a modern bird does. Especially, I don't know why there's a trending towards reconstructing all theropods like a waterfowl for some reason. I don't know. They give them kind of that same feather coating where it's goes back around the eyes and everything. It's I don't know. I'm not trying to critique anybody's paleo art, so I'm not like throwing shade or anything. Just I always wondered why that was.
But some of them we have almost preserved well enough to find that, but it's sometimes those intricacies that get difficult. However, before we move on to the next picture from this one, which we can just address really quickly, I do want to say hello to the chat, because we haven't done that, and it's already 23 minutes in. So I want to welcome everyone in the chat who's joined us. So I know it's the numbers are going up and down a little bit, but welcome there. Thanks for joining us. Let me see who I can spot. So we got T King, Claire. Thanks for joining us as well. Krabby, welcome back. John, we've got Giant Buttholes, the Titan Uranus, because I think that's how you meant to say it. So yeah, welcome to you, and anyone else who is lurking or hiding in the back. Thanks for joining as well. And yes, I will open this up to questions, as I said at the beginning, at some point, and you guys can make suggestions. I just want to get through a couple of the ones I've lined up first. But then, yes, if you do have, so please start thinking of any movies that you guys want to, or TV shows that you want us to have a quick look at for some of their dinosaurs. So the last one, and I think it'll get fast, because once we've covered some of the main things, we can say, well, they've done the same mistake here. Right. But I just liked this
we didn't even
image.
Talk about Guanji's lack of feathers, really. So
yes, but we'll have plenty of opportunities to repeat the lack of feathers thing,
right?
Because even the pterosaurs like this one would have had some kind of feather. It wouldn't have looked as uniform or as neat as a lot of modern birds do, but they had a feather that evolved. It was like convergent evolution, that they did have some kind of feathering. They would have at the very least looked fluffy. It wasn't this like bat-like membrane, just pure membrane wings.
So yeah, the pycnofibers would have been almost like a fine velvet layer on top on a pterosaur. It would have been, they would have looked very soft. They wouldn't have looked scaly or. I mean, they're around certain areas of their body. They might have looked more reptilian, but for the most part, they look very unique, very archosaur-like, fuzzy, and yeah, the membrane here, we can discuss that if you want. It's very bat-like, the way that it's depicted in here. Generally, pterosaurs, the wingtips were not pointed; they were more rounded. Unlike birds and bats that we see today. We'd also see a membrane connecting between the hind legs, which we don't see here because this pterosaur has unique legs that allow it to do something that no pterosaur could ever do, and that's grab people with its feet. But we're going to see that recurring too as we go along, I'm sure.
Yes. Everyone thinks that they're like birds, they'll grab, but they're not. They actually could land and walk on all fours. And I'll have to find some pictures of the more accurate depictions of some of the giant Asdarchids. If anyone wants they're the largest pterosaurs, the largest of which was Quetzalcoatl, which was the size of a giraffe when it was standing on the ground, and it could fly. So imagine a beaked giraffe that was fluffy, running towards you and then taking off. Although they didn't probably have a running start for their takeoff. So
I have a picture next to a life-size model from the Chicago Field Museum somewhere in my camera roll. They were so massive. The skull on this animal. If you stood on your tiptoes and throw your hands up like this, you might be almost as big as this thing's skull was. They had a 9-foot long skull, I think it is. So that's what.
I am way too short for that.
3 meters.
I'm not reaching the top of that. I could probably climb it. I like my rock climbing, but I think that's the closest way to get. So just let me get the next one up. So that's an older one. I want to go to a slightly newer one and I think everyone probably knows where I'm going, because we can't talk about dinosaurs in movies and pop culture without going to this particular example. And so while I just bring them up, and I did find a good still for this one, but of course we just couldn't not have a look at the T-Rex from Jurassic Park.
There she is. Mm-hmm.
Now, there's actually a few things here that they actually do really, really well, and then a couple of things that they don't. The first one with the feathers, we've mentioned when this first came out, it was still fairly speculative as to how many dinosaurs had feathers, and it actually looks like T-Rex didn't have feathers. It looks like that as an adult, they weren't fluffy, because we found well enough preserved fossils that if they had feathers, we should have found some trace. So the argument is changing a little bit. They're not sure on this. It's still quite open. But from my understanding, I think they didn't need feathers, though they wouldn't have probably looked too scaly. Is that?
We do have skin imprints that are believed to be from Tyrannosaurus Rex and other tyrannosaurs as well. Now, there are smaller tyrannosaurs that do have feathers, do have evidence that they had feathers, whether it's on their bones or whether they actually left feathered imprints in the fossil record. But the T-Rex, we have skin imprints of that show skin with no feathers. We don't have, obviously not the whole body of the animal, so it's hard to say that it couldn't have had feathers. Maybe feathers on its tail or feathers on its forelimbs or something like that, and just the majority of the body didn't have feathers on it. Display feathers, crest. I mean, all these things that it could have had.
That would be cool. A nice crest on a T-Rex.
Right. And people think that the birds don't look scary, or that feathered dinosaurs don't look scary. I would imagine a T-Rex with a nice crest like a J would look pretty wicked. Coming at you with its big teeth bared like that. That's another thing about this one. That's still there. They made some advancements. We got the stance and the posture right. We've got
that is one thing they did really well. It is standing more flat, and they got the right number of fingers, but as I'm sure you can see there, they've done our mistake that we sort of mentioned earlier, or at least
with the hands. Yeah.
They're too far down. I know they're slightly curved, but no, they couldn't do that with their hands.
We got digigrade feet. I don't remember. Did Guanji have plantigrade feet? I don't think he did. I think Guanji had digigrade feet too.
So. Is that where they're only standing on their toes? Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Digigrade here.
Let me see if I can double check without going back over the top of this. So let me look. It looks plantigrade from what I can see. So anyone who's plantigrade is like us, where your whole foot is on the ground, whereas digigrade on the digits of the feet, so on standing on the toes. And if you look at most modern birds, they tend to focus on the digits, although they can wrap their little talons around. But our magpie now, one of the magpies, the male one. I've had him sit on my arm before. You get to look at his feet. They're like, oh, it's little dinosaur feet, because they are. It's quite cool. But yeah, so this was the thing, because this is not the only one from Jurassic Park / the newer versions that I've got. But we had to look at that T-Rex because apparently for the time it was not a bad depiction overall compared to some movies. Because again, as I said, the feather thing is a little more open with T-Rexes, and at the time it was before people realized just how feathery they were, or it was like just as they were starting. So yeah, they should have maybe had some of the smaller dinosaurs with feathers, but you can't blame them for not doing the T-Rex with feathers. Though you definitely can blame the later ones, because we know now that the velociraptors and the other raptors, Oviraptor, etc., because the ones they show are not velociraptors, and the book doesn't have them as velociraptors, which explains why they're too big, which we can get to. Hopefully I've got an actual image of the velociraptors. I think I do. But we know they were fluffy. We know they had feathers, and we know they had really good feathers on their arms. Yeah, I still think that's pretty fearsome, though.
And they're suspected to look like, imagine with a velociraptor, with an actual velociraptor, it'd be a little bit, they'd be smaller, but it'd be basically like the size of a jaguar or a mountain lion coming at you with its ripping claws and its plumage. I think that you would decide that feathers are very scary at that moment.
Yes, you're not staying around. You're going the other direction. Although, no, I'll get to that when we show the velociraptors, because there was something else that did come up noted in the literature about them. Although before we do move on, one thing that is really well known from Jurassic Park is the roar of the T-Rex. Do you know how accurate that is? Because my understanding, they probably couldn't roar like they're shown to.
Yeah, no, I've heard depictions of what scientists think that T-Rex would have actually sound like. It definitely doesn't sound like the foghorn roar, the trademarked roar of the Jurassic Park T-Rex. It sounds more like a rumble, like a purr, almost like a sonic purring. Is the way I've heard it depicted. I don't know how accurate the one I heard was. It was on a science channel, but and one that I trust to check their credentials. Was that Edge? I can't remember. It's one of the dinosaur channels that I follow, and I follow a ton of them.
I have seen some of their videos. They do a fairly good job.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a bit in the literature, but it's hard because the parts that we'd need to replicate their sound are not always very well preserved, and it's not that simple. However, they would be very loud if birds are anything to go by. The reason why birds can sing so loud compared to us, even though they're tiny, because I've had a little butcher bird, like little tiny little one this big, sit in front of me and then sing, and I've had to cover my ears because it's too loud. They can convert almost 100% of the air that flows through their larynx. Sorry, not larynx. Syrinx. Sorry, they've got the syrinx. We've got the larynx. That way around. I need to get that correct. They can convert almost all of that airflow into sound waves, whereas humans can only convert with our larynx about 2-3%. So we just can't match them in terms of efficiency of making sound. So if they're extinct cousins like the T-Rex or anything to go by, they could probably make very loud sounds. They just wouldn't sound like a roar.
Yeah, we can't match their respiratory system, dinosaur respiratory systems.
Oh yes,
even
circular
close.
breathing.
The sauropods, all of them had these fantastic lungs.
Yeah, and the structure of the bones in the adolescent T-Rexes looks like they were sprinters, but the adults, it looks like they actually changed their hunting style as they got older. Once they were a fully grown adult, the bone structure suggests they were marathon runners, and I've heard estimates for about 40 kilometers per hour, which is about the fastest a human has ever sprinted. It's kind of like Usain Bolt sprinting speeds, but they could run marathons at that. They also, since we're still on the Jurassic Park T-Rex, if anyone who's seen it will know that they mentioned that they need movement. They see movement. No, that's not the case. They had the biggest eyes of any land animal. They would have seen you and start running at you well before you knew they were there. You just can't get away from them. They were a phenomenal predator.
And they have binocular vision, so they are locking in on you.
Yes. Plus, they're perfect sized prey, because they wouldn't go after something similar size to it, because like a lot of, particularly because it looks like they were individual hunters. Most individual hunters go for things significantly smaller than them. Not always. They obviously could, and we have evidence that they did go after bigger things. But the things they seem to go after most is juvenile dinosaurs. So small things, which is exactly how modern predators tend to behave.
Apex predators today go when they hunt, they separate the weak or the sick. They separate the young and the old from the herd when they're attacking. So there's no reason ecologically to think that that even massive dinosaurs were not doing the same thing.
I just like this one. Yes, you better toss something, because you got to distract it from you, because if they appeared today, we'd be pretty fine, because a rifle is going to take this thing down. It might take a few bullets, but there's no such thing as a bulletproof dinosaur, which if you've seen Jurassic World, you're like, how on earth did a minigun fail?
Right. They're still animals. They're not... Not monsters.
Ooh, actually, because we were talking about this, I do like this question, which you can take a bit earlier. Would size be the only criterion, as we don't otherwise look like prey that instinctively hunt? That is a good point. From my understanding, because they were also scavengers as well as hunters, they had a fairly varied diet. So, yeah, I know a lot of animals won't go after things that don't look like prey, but that doesn't mean they won't try. Sharks are a good example, I think. But
even if they tried just to play with us, these are again animals, but they're smart animals like birds. I mean, theropods are generally considered pretty smart. There are some lower intelligent species with smaller brain cases, like for instance, ostriches are not exactly the brightest of the bunch, and I don't think that owls are particularly smart either, because most of their skulls are occupied by their eyes. Their eyes are bigger than their brains in most species of owl. But the theropods were, considered pretty intelligent among the dinosaurs.
So yeah, I just like the idea that the T-Rex is pretty clever. That is one thing that the Jurassic Park does get fairly correct with the theropods, particularly with the velociraptors, is they do show them to be reasonably intelligent, and that is quite accurate. Though, see how? Oh no, we'll come back to that one. Yeah, here we go. Because
there's our raptor.
The one, yes, and these guys are pretty wrong. There's just quite a few things wrong. The movie calls them velociraptors. The book doesn't call them that. I can't remember what species they're meant to be, but it's an actual larger species, so they shouldn't be called velociraptors. It was just everyone knew that name. Velociraptor...
it was picked because it sounds the coolest of the dromaeosaurs. It's the one that sounds scary. Velociraptor. Velociraptors were smaller. Even though I was talking about dromaeosaurs earlier and mentioned that they were the size of a cougar, that was dromaeosaurs. Velociraptors, the actual velociraptors, not the ones that these were based on, were about the size of a turkey. They were good 30 pounds or so, maybe a little bit heavier than that, but they were.
They'd hurt you, but you could still probably give them a good kick on the way in.
Yeah, it'd be.
And the other thing that they get really wrong is that it doesn't look like they were pack hunters. It looks like, based on the fossil evidence we found, because there are certain things you would expect to see for things that did group hunting, we've not found any of that. We found evidence that, in fact, they were individual hunters. Even the juveniles, I think, were reasonably independent as well. So they wouldn't have teamed up. They wouldn't have been that big. They definitely had feathers, so they should be fluffy, not that that reduces their scariness. There are, yes, other dromaeosaurs that do fit the description a little better. Also, the hands, they would not have been holding their hands quite like that. Fingers would have been kind of facing in, but they would have had big feathers, because that's where they reckon the flight feathers on birds originally evolved, were dinosaurs like this that got them to keep eggs warm. One of the other raptors, one of the first ones to be, or one of the earlier ones to be described, is Oviraptor, which means egg thief, because they kept finding it with eggs. Then later on, they found one that was just undoubtedly sitting on a nest of eggs, and they realized they're not stealing them. They were keeping them warm, which tells us that they were warm-blooded, which means they were very active, which, yes, that's something movies do tend to get correct these days. Older depictions tend to have them a bit slower, but the smaller ones are incredibly active. But it means they were pretty much
tend to focus on the giant ones, and then the newer movies can focus more on the more different sized dinosaurs as well.
Yeah, though. And again, I think the sounds are wrong, but I think they have them protonated as well. However, you can see in this one down the bottom corner, it's giant claw, which they're well known for. They did have these big ripping claws for jumping on you. It's just the overall size was not quite the same. And sorry, I'm just trying to bring up what a more modern depiction of a velociraptor is. Is there anything else you've noticed? Because I've been.
Oh no, yeah, I'm on board with everything you said. About the feathers on the arms. While you're bringing that up, while you're pulling that up, they use them to keep their eggs warm. They also think that they could have used them to balance when they're chasing their prey. So they got the tail and the arms going, and they can help them navigate and outmaneuver fleeing prey items. They could have also, as the more derived Maniraptorans, would have been able to maybe use them to aid in running up sides of trees, maybe even jumping from branch to branch in some of the smaller species. Yeah. So look at this. That's a modern depiction.
Of a dromaeosaur. And notice again, I like just how different it is to that. Like, it's one of the furthest apart from what you would expect, but they still look so cool. Like, you can make that look fierce,
right?
You could.
Have you ever seen the test footage from the original raptors in the kitchen scene from Jurassic Park?
No.
There's a stop motion and computer graphic kind of meshed version of that scene that's really makes them look really reptilian. They have forked tongues and stuff when they were pitching the idea of the movie. Yeah, it was.
They're not lizards. Everybody thinks they're lizards, but they're not lizards.
Maybe they were pushing the hybrid idea back then, I guess.
Yeah, but yeah. So that's not a velociraptor, this one, but it is another type of dromaeosaur. So that's a slightly larger one. But it's very different, these two from this guy. But that kind of brings us back to the other one that I think is incredibly inaccurate, at least for one thing, and that's this guy from the Jurassic World.
And I'll say both these guys are inaccurate, greatly inaccurate.
Yes. The pterosaur is not fluffy. Should be fluffy.
They grab things with their feet.
Yes. They do grab things with their feet in this, and they should not be able to do that. Chances are they would have landed on all fours and then attacked their prey.
Yeah, attacked with their beak. If they even the huge ones, the monstrous ones like we were talking about earlier, like
Quetzalcoatl.
Quetzalcoatl.
They reckon they hunted like a giant stork.
Right.
They call it the stork theory because, of course, they have to be creative.
And they generally think that these is behaving like seabirds, so them attacking the crowds of park visitors in that scene where all hell breaks loose right before this happens, they wouldn't have been attacking people. They would have most of the species would have been fish eaters or proposed fish eaters, because we find a lot of their remains, at least in North America, in the Western Seaway. We find fish bones in their stomachs. We know that they were piscivores. But
though the other one on that, though, I've heard is that sea, kind of like shallow seas, is where you're more likely to get fossilization, so it could be a little biased. But yes, from what we understand, they're not. And also, at their sizes, they wouldn't have probably been able to hunt human-sized things, because most flying creatures have to go after things that are significantly smaller than them, generally speaking. And there's a good chance that with these ones, you'd be able to hit them back.
The only exceptions I can think about is like golden eagles, because they will throw significantly larger mountain goats right off the side of a mountain and then go down there and eat it.
Yes, but that's a very different hunting style to what we see, and their anatomy is so different from a pterosaur that's not how the pterosaurs.
The way that they want to depict them is like they're birds of prey, like they're giant raptors, basically. Like when I say raptors here, I mean raptors as in eagles and hawks and falcons.
Whereas I have heard that like some of them, they originally, particularly in like Walking with Dinosaurs, show them skim feeding for fish, but they actually reckon that was because for some reason a long time ago they thought they couldn't get wet, but it turns out there's nothing wrong with them getting wet. That's not going to stop them flying. So a lot of them probably were a bit like modern diving birds. I don't know which ones, but they actually would have dived into the water to get fish, and then they could come back out. So some of them were probably half decent swimmers, which is, I think, quite cool. They could have shown that. They could have showed them going in, and then
I wonder if their pycnofibers were hydrophobic.
It would have been like birds. So I think the feathers themselves wouldn't have been, but birds produce oils that do protect them against water. It's why when it's raining and a bird shows up and the trees in our backyard, they look drenched, except their feathers are fine. Like their flight feathers are fine, even though their chests are completely soaked. The butcher birds, I've posted, I've tweeted pictures of them showing up before. They look so scruffy when they're wet, but their feathers are fine. Their wing feathers, are fine. But talking about the water, the other giant elephant in the picture.
Giant, yes.
What the hell is this thing meant to be? I know it's a mosasaur, but
as far as I'm aware, there is no mosasaur even approaching this size. This thing is the biggest mosasaurs were about 2/3 of what this thing is depicted here. They were generally about the size of like an orca, maybe getting a little bit bigger than that. But this one is the size of a blue whale. This would be, as far as I can see, the way that from different angles and stuff, looking at this organism, it would be the biggest animal on Earth.
Yes,
at least by mass, because it's a lot bulkier than, because blue whales are huge, but they're very skinny. They're almost serpentine compared to other smaller species of whales, but they're really long and they are heavy. This guy is about as long as a blue whale, but he's bulky like a salty.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that I'm trying to think of how accurate, but I know just for anyone who wants to know what a mosasaur is, they're not a dinosaur. Yeah. So anyone who says it's a dinosaur is thinking of their little child playset. They're actually lizards. They're lizards that, so when dolphins. So when we look at a lot of mammals that evolved back into the sea, like dolphins, although I think the better example here in terms of how they swim is probably seals. If we look at seals, sea lions, walruses, etc., even kind of dugongs, manatees, etc., and we have a look at how they've evolved back in, it was the same, but these guys were lizards. We have a really good track record of them, actually. Their evolutionary history is fairly well understood, at least early on, where you can see the lizards, it's like lake and river areas, and then they slowly get better adapted and get bigger and bigger and move further and further out to sea before you find them most places. But they're not the only ones. The other ones that you mentioned earlier is ichthyosaurs, which I just love the name because the Latin translation is just fish lizard, which is unlike dinosaur, which is to do with, which mentions lizards in the Latin name. Dinosaurs aren't lizards, but the mosasaurs and the ichthyosaurs were actually lizards in the sense that their ancestors were lizards.
Mosasaurs I think were definitely lizards.
Am I wrong about the ichthyosaurs? They're reptiles. Sorry,
they're reptiles. Are reptiles, but they're not lizards. But mosasaurs were. Right. Yeah, they're not. They are nested. They're close relatives to varanids and snakes. So varanids are monitor lizards, Komodo dragons. What do you all have? You mentioned one that you have down there. Was it the blue tongue? Is that a monitor lizard?
Yeah, well, we've got blue tongue, we've got the water dragons, but we've also got goannas as well, which are fairly big. I haven't seen one for a while, but I've seen them a few times in my life.
Yeah, goannas are good. Yeah, they get pretty good size too.
Like, yeah. I was at the zoo the other day with my siblings because we want to go for a break, and they had a Komodo dragon there, and I think it's the first time I've seen one. They're huge. And these things that would have been scary, and they wouldn't have needed to be this big. But yeah, I said, I think the shape and the depiction of how they swim is not too bad, but their hunting styles are terrible. The way they show them, because I think Jurassic Park actually has depictions of them when they first escape, and you see one kind of like the people are surfing and it appears in the wave.
Right.
Is that number 3?
Doing the great white thing. Yeah, where it's swimming.
Yeah, which they wouldn't have done, particularly that close to shore, because they would have beached themselves.
They're going off like the way the orcas come up on the beach and get seals and stuff. But something this big, as big as the Jurassic Park mosasaur is, it would have crushed its lungs under its own weight trying to shore feed.
Yes. Yeah, they just couldn't. Yeah, and their hunting style, like the jumping out of the water, is not probably what they did. They probably were sprint, kind of like ambush predators, where they'd get close and then zoom in on the last distance using their size and power, because they probably wouldn't have been marathon swimmers. But one of the things they keep finding in the bellies or in the fossil bellies of mosasaurs is other mosasaurs. They were really, really good at hunting, and they hunted each other too. And I think
you'll see that with modern varanids too, and snakes. Yeah, they like eating each other.
And it's just, to me, it's just they've gone a bit overboard. It's just too big.
The coloration on it's good though. We would expect it to be colored lighter on the bottom and sort of grayish blue from the top.
You can actually kind of see that with the shark too. Let me kind of zoom a bit in. You can see the shark. They would have had a similar coloration. So I gotta give them. Yeah, that's one of the few times I think they've actually got the color or like the texture right.
Yeah, Jurassic Park's pretty bad about that too. There wouldn't have been there could have been some raptors with blue markings on them. There could have been, but that would have been, of course, first of all, that would have been feathers. It wouldn't have been blue scales like a blue raptor that we looked at previously. But the coloration here, they did all right. I think the coloration on the T-Rex is okay too.
Now, I have a couple of questions before we move on, unless you have something you want to add. So I'll bring up. So I did promise Krabby would come back to this one. I'm still going to have open questions at the end. So if I've missed anything, you'll definitely get time. Do we know what their eyes actually look like? Because I don't know the answer to this one. I know that for things like ichthyosaurs and raptors, we know that they had like a ring of bone that sat in their eyes, and a lot of old depictions. I'll see if I can find one while when I get BrainBug the open floor for having a go at this one. And so you can actually see kind of weird rings in their eyes in the older depictions, but we now understand that you probably wouldn't see them because there still are animals with similar features and you don't see it.
Right.
But I don't think other than that, we have a lot to go off other than comparing them to modern things because eyes don't fossilize. Let me see if I can find...
That's kind of like the same with the we were talking about the brains earlier and stuff. We have to infer some of this data from comparative anatomy, looking at the way that these animals relate to other species to kind of build an image of the way that their eye structure would have been. But yeah, this is ichthyosaur.
So you can see the fossils, they have these rings in their eyes. A lot of our kind of ancient creatures did. But some of and some of the really early depictions of them tended to show those rings. You can even in Walking with Dinosaurs, if I can...
Yeah, I think they showed the ring in that too.
They do show that. Yeah, you can kind of when you have a look at... I hit the wrong one. You can... it's not... that lighting's not as bad. Some of the shots, they kind of show rings.
It looks like, but you can see the ring. They did the Walking With series near and dear to my heart, much like the Jurassic Park series.
Oh, they're amazing.
They did a lot of shrink wrapping on their reconstruction.
Yes, that's kind of... It looks like you see a lot of the bones and things and the shape, whereas you don't tend to see that. They would have been a little more plump.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's so. It's really limited as to we don't... Oh, where's our is there dinosaurs?
There's us.
Yes, there's us, and there we go.
There's our mosasaur.
They're back. Anyway, I'm going to start bringing up the next one. Although we might not quite get to as many as I have planned because I have way too many here because we're having such a good time that we're getting through these. But there, I decided to go a little differently with The Land Before Time for this one because it's a little cartoon. It's a slightly older one, but they seem to get a lot of things wrong though.
This was my childhood right here.
It was just kind of before my time where I've seen bits of them. Ironic to the name, but it was something that I knew of it. I've seen little bits, but I was a bit too young to remember it.
These are Charles Knight dinosaurs. This is basically baby Charles Knight dinosaurs, the movie. Charles Knight again was a early 20th century artist that did a lot of paleo art. I'm a big fan of paleo art. You can see his original works, and again, I keep plugging this place, but I love this Field Museum. The Chicago Field Museum has a great gallery. Well, it's the gallery plus the dinosaur the dinosaur room. So it's Charles Knight's gallery, gorgeous. But the way that dinosaurs were depicted up until this about right here, Land Before Time, is about where it ended. They were based on his paintings and drawings, where again the kangaroo stance for the theropods, the sauropods that drag their tails. I think all of these.
They got all the legs out to the side as well, like lizards almost.
Mm-hmm.
Lizards trying to stand up, or even crocodiles, which they couldn't.
And again, we have a pterosaur here that, if I remember correctly, the pterosaur stands on its hind legs and can use its hands to manipulate things.
The square faces, they were more rounded than that. And with a few exceptions for sauropods, I think they all had much more rounded faces. Though I do like how they've got beaks on a nice little purple one. I know you wouldn't have had purple, though. It's still a cartoon, so you can't blame them too much for the color.
I don't recognize that one. I'm not sure I know which. This may be one of the newer movies. She looks like maybe she's an oviraptor. is my guess. She's got some feathers though. Look, she's got feathers on her arms.
I know, it's pretty cool. That's not too bad for an older depiction of them, because that was but you can tell that they've really got their influence and their idea from modern lizards rather than what we would think of as more bird-like dinosaurs. But I just want to put that one in. There's the other picture I got from here.
Before we move on to this, I just want to bring up something real quick about Land Before Time. When Littlefoot, the very first movie, when he's running and escaping, he runs into a Dimetrodon. I don't know if anybody out. I know I do know, like Titan Uranus is out there, and Titan knows. Dimetrodons were long gone by this. This seems to be either late Jurassic or Cretaceous at some point.
If you've got raptors in there, yeah.
But the Permian extinction would have, but Dimetrodons were gone even well before that, because they had been replaced in most of their niches by like Gorgonopsids and things like that. Early Permian is Dimetrodon. They're the ones that look very lizard-like, but have the big sail on their back, large carnivorous synapsids.
Yeah, and that's separate from the Spinosaurus, which is the big sail dinosaur.
Right,
those are different.
Moves on all
the Dimetrodon was long gone, but they're more closely related to us than dinosaurs are.
Right, but yeah, there's a scene where Littlefoot runs into one and it gets aggressive with him. Yeah.
I'm gonna try and see if I can find a picture of this for anyone. This guy here is the one we're talking about. So, they're more closely related to us than.
These are synapsids, early synapsids. They were apex predators in their time, and synapsids had a good run from the Carboniferous rainforest collapse to the Great Dying at the end of the Permian.
Yeah, they do change a lot, but it's a really long run, and then they kind of phase out, because the end Permian extinction, the Permian Triassic one, is also known as the Great Dying, and excluding what we're doing to the planet now, is the biggest extinction event this planet's ever seen. It was about 95% of all species died, 80% of all genre, the genus level disappeared, and pretty much any big thing was gone. It didn't end the trilobites. No, did it end the trilobites, or they got? I think the trilobites. Sorry,
it did end the trilobites.
That's right, because they survived early extinctions, and there was only 2 major species left, and then they disappear at this point as well. So the trilobites are one of the longest running clades in evolutionary history. They're the typical little shell things that you tend to see if you think of fossils. The kind of the flat with the little segments. They're like little flat crabs almost. They've an incredible history, and that wiped them out. It wiped so many things out. The mammal-like reptiles, the
only synapsids to survive were us. Were the mammals.
Yeah, we were pretty much the only thing that got through that. It's just incredible how many other creatures are out there. And they're still not 100% sure what actually messed with the planet so much, but it's most likely a severe amount of global warming that was probably induced by what is now Siberia, pretty much all of Siberia just erupting as in this giant volcano.
And all traps is what they called it. Yes, it was a major... you can even call it a volcanic eruption, because just the continent split open, and there were just
it's not a couple of little volcanoes. It was Siberia literally erupted and ripped itself apart. That's what they reckon, and I've heard some theories that suggest that it was actually a asteroid impact on the other end of the planet that kicked that off, and the Contra Cousette hit, and the shockwave was what actually sent it through as well, which kind of makes sense. But I think that one's still a little open in the air. But anyway, so yeah, they were long gone. But yeah, that's a side note.
That's quite the tangent that we went on about the Dimetrodon.
Anyway, we're getting to the hour mark, and I am cautious because I will open this up to questions plus give other people chances. So BrainBug, unless you have a movie you really want to go over, how about I open this up to, we can go look at whatever people in the chat want to suggest.
Let's look at Sharptooth real quick here, and then we will Sharptooth the next the
oh yes, that's right.
Yeah,
yes.
We'll look at him real quick.
I'm guessing he's meant to be a T-Rex.
Yes, and the 2 fingers, he's good. This guy was in my nightmares as a little kid. He was so terrifying. Look at all those teeth, and you see this one doesn't have any lips either. We got red eyes with this one. He does
big
stand
nostrils.
Yeah, he does stand more upright than Dinosaurs really did. He's not quite kangaroo stance. I think he keeps his tail loose a little bit off the ground, but still the angle at which his body stands is more like a kangaroo.
Yeah, it's got this kind of snarling, but again, you can see him with his hands are flat again, and he's like almost gripping things this way.
Actually, does he have lips? Are those lips?
It kind of looks like he's snarling. They've kind of given him half lips, maybe.
Yeah.
That'd
be pretty.
But if they had lips, it wouldn't have been like ours. They wouldn't have been as mobile. It was just to help cover the teeth when the mouth was closed.
More like a lizard's lips or a. Yeah. But yeah, he's got his 2 fingers here, so we're pretty sure that this is a T-Rex. The skin's not too bad. The coloration's not bad either. Yeah, the teeth are ridiculous, but you get that square snout. The same thing we saw with the other dinosaurs. They gave them really square, blunted. That might be an artistic choice though. So I'd have to see how they depict modern animals to decide if that was accurate enough or not. But anything else about this guy before we open it up to let some?
I think I'm good because I think we've covered a lot of the other things in previous ones as to what's wrong here. Yeah, I'm happy to open this up. So I'm going to just minimize this for the moment. So yes, if you're in the chat, if you've asked a question previously and I've missed it, apologies because we've been trying to get through all this. So if you do have a question, feel free to add it in. Just make sure you tag me so it highlights it and it makes it easy for me to spot. So we're going to open up to any questions. We will preference ones about dinosaurs, and especially if you have movies or TV shows that you want us to have a quick look at like this, I can do a quick Google search. So I'll get that up ready in the background to go. So yeah, if you have a dinosaur movie that you want to have a look at, just let me know. We can have a go at it. Although I noticed, because Krabby's been bringing it up, and every time I'm doing a stream, of course, we have to mention lasers. So they're not laser eyes. No, they're not. I'm really sad by that. I'm hoping to see some green lasers in animals, so just because humans can see those better. But yeah, I'm not putting lasers on dinosaurs unless birds count. Then we can have flying laser weapons. I'm still working on getting them on sharks.
Well, there was this, when I was a kid, there was this cartoon called Dino Riders. Okay, it was there was the good guys, the human-looking people that crashed on this land, and then the enemies crashed on the land, and they used mind control to put basically a Star Wars tech on dinosaurs. And the main point of this whole prospect was to sell toys to us, of course, which I did have some Dino Rider toys, but man, that show was very influential to making me love dinosaurs and want to learn more about them. Anybody out there in the live chat remember Dino Riders? They had like at least one season of a cartoon. The bad guys had like the predatory dinosaurs. They had the T-Rex and the raptors and the baryonyx and all these angry sharp-toothed dinosaurs, the theropods mostly. I think they did have a few other dinosaurs as well, but then the good guys had like the ceratops and the sauropods and things like that in their corner. It was goofy, 80s kids cartoon, much in the vein of like G.I. Joe and Ninja Turtles, just out there to sell us toys. But Jurassic Park was the same way. They were all about selling toys. Did you have any Jurassic Park toys when you were a kid?
No, I didn't. It was actually one of the first like kind of M movies that I ever saw, like more graphic movies, because I was still fairly young. I was in. It came out, or at least the first time I saw it, I was still in primary school, and it was really scary because I'd never seen movies like that, and that was where I have nightmares from. Or early on, did. Now I look back at it, and none of those movies don't scare me, but obviously, little kid, it did worry me a bit. No, I didn't really have those sorts of toys. I'm more likely to have like the Transformer type ones.
Yeah.
I was a big Lego kid. I still have some Lego now, but I don't use it as much. And so yeah, I had all the Star Wars Lego. That was my toys from movies. So maybe more laser related. Although they don't have lasers, I could do an entire video on why we know that what they have there is not lasers. Definitely not lasers. Not how
and
they
Star
work.
Wars, yeah, with their blasters and stuff are not lasers, right? Blasters are not.
Yes, they don't even call them that. But even the beams they try and show that look more laser-like is not how lasers operate. And I don't know anything that would look like that. You might be able to have something, but just the way that you show weapons in those, it's not how you do it. If you want a weapon to work in space that's really powerful, the most efficient thing to do is just take a solid object from a good distance away and fire it. The amount of momentum and kinetic energy a large solid rod, particularly for something launched like the Death Star, once it hits a planet, it's going to be the KT dinosaur extinction all over again at minimum. That's your best bet if you want a giant world-ending space weapon. Lasers, unfortunately, as cool as they might seem in movies, are not efficient weapons. Which is why I'm not putting them on dinosaurs at this point. I'm just attaching.
Well, we got to start with sharks, right? I mean,
yeah, because every fish deserves a warm meal.
Right. Yeah.
But yes, that is
come up on your channel.
Yes, I have had that video where we've got over the why Dr. Evil can't have his laser sharks. I am going to do a video at some point on space lasers. I'll probably do it as a proper like produced video rather than a live stream.
So when you finish your program and your PhD, are you going to go the full mad scientist route, or? I mean,
I'm not exactly sure exactly what I'm going to do then, but I do for my PhD. Yeah, I mean, like play with lasers for a living with my PhD. So, who knows? Valley of the Dinosaurs. I'm just seeing if I can bring up a couple of images because this is, I think, well before my time. But all right, so there's a couple of images. Let me just see if I can catch a good one. Oh, here we go. Let me bring this up, just doing a Google search. So this is interesting. All right, so
kid show.
I think there's a couple of creationists who think this is a documentary.
I know a few of them myself. Yeah.
And I think this is looking more like the earlier depictions of the very slow swamp-like docile dinosaurs. You can see it kind of sitting in the water, even though a sauropod. I mean, they didn't stand like that either. They reckon now they're actually tended not to lift their heads up. The reason they had the long necks was so they could actually get a wider sweep. But from the stomach contents, it looks like they weren't going necessarily for high things, a lot of them at least.
Yeah, it was covering a lot of land without having to without having to walk and move your big bulky body around. That's what the benefits of the long necks were, really, so that they could browse. And there were, the brachiosaurs that stood, more upright like this, and then there were the like diplodocids that had their neck more forward, and they fed at different levels of foliage, so that way that they could both clades could exist in the same habitat and not compete with each other for food.
I do like this one because that looks like a baby stegosaur.
I vaguely remember this cartoon looking at that baby stegosaur now.
The other thing is that stegosaurs were probably one of the more stupid of the dinosaurs. Their brain case was incredibly tiny compared to their body, more so than others. So they probably weren't all that interactive with people. I think they would have been really difficult to.
Been a lot like a turtle, and it's
that, and they can't smile like that.
Yeah. Well,
they wouldn't have been able to pull. Click on the wrong one. Wait. Like they wouldn't have been able to have facial expressions. Also, they would have had nictitating or membranes too. They wouldn't have had, like, they could close eyes, but they'd normally blink like birds do, wouldn't they? They'd have a like the little flap of skin.
One would expect that they'd have, because there's no reason to believe that it would have been reduced. It's not reduced in any other archosaurs that I'm familiar with. So yeah, we would expect to see that. We'd expect to see that in all dinosaurs, really. Nictitating membrane. That's
they'd still be able to close their eyes though, but it's
they would have blinked this way though, and then they could have closed their eyes, but they would have had that fold over the top of it coming this from a different direction there. Why is
they're only 65 and a bit million years off.
Right. I mean, this was the same. It's probably the same formula with just dinosaur version of Scooby-Doo, but you have
yeah. But the other thing is too is that I think the stegosaurs were also they were Jurassic, so they would have been even older. I don't think they made it to the Cretaceous, but I could be wrong about that.
Not stegosaurs, no.
So you're looking like another 50 plus million years older than that.
Yeah,
so people forget just how long because when did the Cretaceous? So it went Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous. I know the Cretaceous ended at 65 million years. When did the Triassic start, or at least when did the Permian end? I can't quite remember.
The Permian was that. I want to say it was 400 million years ago. Hold on,
I thought it was in the threes. I'll do. I can't even spell. Sorry, I'm just doing some. And
200. 290.
250. Yeah, 250 to 200. So you're going from 250 to 65, which is nearly 200 million years. It's not a short amount of time in anything once you have multicellular animals. Yes, in terms of the 4.5 billion years the solar system's been here for, it's not that long, and probably the 3.5 or more likely 3.8 billion years life's been here. Complex life's only been here for about 600 million years, so it's a good nearly 200 million years. It's nearly a third of the time we've had animals for.
People underestimate just how long the Paleozoic was, just in general. The Mesozoic and the Cenozoic. The Mesozoic's a lot bigger than the Cenozoic is, but the Mesozoic is even tiny compared to how long we look at when we talk about the Paleozoic. Going back to starting from the Cambrian to moving forward to the Permian, it's a really, really long time.
Just to give people an idea. Temporally speaking, your iPhone is closer in time to a T-Rex than a T-Rex is to a stegosaur.
Right. 70 million years between a T-Rex and a stegosaur, and 65 million between a human and a Tyrannosaur. Yeah. So if
one of my favorite paleontology examples, and I should do a video on it, but there are big channels that have done probably better jobs than I can. But one of my favorite examples of paleontology with spectroscopy, because that's what I am, I'm a spectroscopist, is to do with mass spectrometry, and it was to do with a really, really ancient creature called a Dickinsonia. To give you an idea, mass spectroscopy is where you take a sample of something. It can be one chemical, it can be a solution, be a bunch of different ones, and you throw them in a machine, it sprays it out, and then hits them, and it fires them through all these chambers, and based on how they move and how they bend through magnets and everything, you can weigh individual molecules. Plus, it'll break apart and you can weigh fragments, so you can figure out a really, really good idea fairly quickly of what molecule you have. You can weigh individual molecules. It's so cool. And some of these use superconducting magnets and, cooled with liquid nitrogen, because we haven't got anything close to room temperature for any other science nerds out there. Despite what some papers in the last few years have tried to suggest that hasn't yet been replicated. They can be so accurate that you can not only get a whole weight, you can tell the exact chemical, like the empirical formula, because the atomic weights between, say, carbon and nitrogen are so slightly different that these things are sensitive enough to know whether it's, say, 6 nitrogens or 8 carbons. Like, you can tell exactly how many if you've got one of the more powerful ones. What someone did was these old creatures, I'll see if I can bring up a picture while I'm chatting, the Dickinsonia.
Dickinsonia, were they were
5.5 million years ago. Here we go. Here's a nice image. This is bring this back up. So these things, we only have imprints, like you can see, like the one I've got maximized. For a long time, scientists didn't even know if these were an animal, a plant, a fungi, or maybe even a different kingdom entirely, because this is pre-Cambrian. This is really, really old. They didn't know what these things were. And then along comes a PhD paleontologist who was like, I have an idea. I'm going to take some of these fossils, I'm going to grind them up and throw them through a mass spectrometer. These machines were so sensitive that based on the weights of the particles in it, they could detect amounts of steroids, because although most organic chemicals break down over that time, particularly for these, because they're 550 million years ago, the steroids were detectable with a mass spectrometer. And the difference between the rock outside and inside told them that the ratio of steroids to other chemicals, they are an animal. So they used modern spectroscopy to analyze a 5.5 million year old fossil to figure out it was an animal. It's so, I love it because it's my field, but I just think it's so cool just how powerful some of our techniques are.
And this is a time period we don't know much about. So learning that there was, determinate this is an animal back in the idiot car, and that's fascinating. We can pin it down that much.
Yeah. Also, here we go. Hey, Kyle. Would a brontosaurus's neck have even been strong enough for quarrying like it is in the Flintstones? Wouldn't it be too floppy? I probably a little too weak for quarrying. I don't think we've got dinosaurs that can quite match mining equipment, but it's a cool thought experiment. But yes, I think the only people that take the Flintstones as a documentary or have a pretty flawed understanding of reality. But anyway, though, I think Titan Uranus does also have on Land of the Lost is one we haven't had a quick look at. So let me see. Did I actually have pictures from that one? Give me Land of the Lost. No, I have not.
There's a couple of renditions of that. There's the old one from, I think it was the 60s or the 70s, and then there was one that was remade in the early 90s. Then the movie that came out with Will Ferrell.
Yeah, well, there's that one. Again, I think it's very similar problems with that T-Rex, even though it's not the best image of it. There's another one. Yeah, they've pretty much, I think, made the same mistakes as everyone else so far with their T-Rex.
This was parroting the Jurassic Park T-Rex, I think, is the way that they designed this one. Make it look as much like the Jurassic Park T-Rex without getting sued as they could.
Well, they've got the hands wrong. They've got maybe the skin's okay. I don't know about the ridges on its head. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have had those. The face looks really narrow. Because the other thing too, now that I remember, is recent finds have shown that the T-Rex was a really, really chunky dinosaur. He was a big boy. They weren't thin. They were really solid tank-like things. They weren't skinny dinosaurs.
Right.
Particularly if you look at modern kind of fossils with the belly ribs intact, you can see just how large these things were.
Yeah, they were. This one's too skinny for sure. It looks too narrow to be a T-Rex. It only has 2 fingers, so I'm guessing it's a T-Rex. But they did. I think they did anthropomorphize the face a little bit, because if I recall the story plot, this T-Rex has some personality. So yeah, there was. Was this the only dinosaur depicted in this one? I can't remember.
They've got a few things in. I think that says enough.
The Slee Stack. Those were the lizard people in the Land of the Lost.
But yeah, there's that was definitely a good one. I think John, I've been corrected, as the original suggester of Land of the Lost. So yeah, thanks for that one. And feel free to retweet any repost any questions if I've missed one of yours. I just repeat yourself until I answer it. No, sorry, they're not real as far as we can tell.
Well, we got a second here though. Let's try to classify what is Dino. What kind of dinosaur is Dino?
Which one is Dino again?
He's the pet dinosaur off of the Flintstones.
I'm just trying to get up an image of him for that one. Oh, well, yes, this is going to be, this will be a challenge. All right.
Yes, there's some different characteristics here that make it really difficult to classify what exactly Dino is. Now, with his neck, his barrel-shaped body, and his long tail, I want to say he's a sauropod, but a very small sauropod. And then he has his forepaws, or hands, as they look like hands, are 3-fingered, which is kind of concerning, but I'm not going to, it's a cartoon, so I think the humans only had 4 fingers, so I'm not going to come down too hard on that. But looking at Dino, his basic body structure, I'm going to say he's what we used to be called a prosauropod, maybe a Camarasaurus. What do you think?
Maybe. He's kind of a sauropod that thinks that he's a dog.
Right. He's I don't know if he's well, I guess prosauropods classed under sauropod now, but let me see here. So Dino, what was I going to look up? I was going to look up Camarasaurus.
If you have any images you want to share, let me just hit the share screen. I can switch them over for you if you find anything worth it.
Here we go.
BrainBug, I think we've been corrected. I think we've been defeated. Checkmate, scientists. We said you can. Although this is more pink than purple, so. But yeah.
Camarasaurus is actually bigger than I was thinking it was. It's quite a bit bigger. Europasaurus would have been maybe a viable candidate. Let's see.
Oh, actually, there is one thing I want to bring up really quickly that is horribly wrong about the Walking with Monsters. It's not a dinosaur, but I do want to bring this up. Let me see if I can find it. It's probably going to take me a bit. Mesothelae. That's the one.
Oh, the spider.
Yes, I want to bring this one up because I think you'll like this. Oh no, you've got something you want to. Sorry. Yeah, go with this. That's the one you were thinking.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. Europasaurus are more Dino size, but when I looked up, or when I pulled this up, some other ones came up that might be good candidates too.
Yeah, could be a juvenile too.
Megasaurus. Yeah, so there's a few candidates for Dino that are smaller. This one doesn't have the 4 paws that I'm looking for, though. We need something with more paw-like, more hand-like 4 paws. So we'll keep looking. If you have any suggestions, here we go. Volcanodon. That one looks pretty close to Dino. They even got it in the color pink. So maybe
maybe we can have a look at that.
Dino was a Snorkosaurus. Yeah, I think that they do say that at some point in the show. I don't think that it's not a real dinosaur though. If I discover early sauropod, though, I'll name it that just to have that.
Oh, there's some cool names. There was one dinosaur where the only thing they found of it was the eye socket from the skull, so they called it. They named it after Sauron from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's awesome. You were bringing up Mesothelia, and that's from Walking with
Monsters, which is the series for the Walking with Dinosaurs series that goes before the dinosaurs. So this is from the Carboniferous episode, and one of the main animals that you see is this giant spider. The Carboniferous was about 300 million years ago. I think it's about 350 to 250, somewhere in that range. Yeah, I think
they show it on the screen. It's like, I think they go back to like 350 is when this is supposed to take place.
Yeah, and so you're looking about 300, and they show this kind of big, ugly spider creature. I'm not going to ruin it because this is your area, because this is a bug.
Oh, yeah. So
I'll let you ruin this one for everyone.
While they were working on it, so they found this fossil. It was a carapace of a large invertebrate, and they compared it to early spiders. Like, this is a giant prehistoric Carboniferous spider. But that didn't last long. But it did last long enough for him to build this model and shoot all this scene with it, and it was called what was the Mega Arachne. Okay, so it wasn't always going to be called Mesothelia on the show. It was Mega Arachne is what the name of it was, and it was this. As you see, he's pulling it up on the screen here. It was actually turned out to be a sea scorpion that had moved into a terrestrial habitat. So, not a spider, but a sea scorpion, very different. But the animal depicted in the Walking with Monsters series is very, very much a spider. So instead of rebuilding the model and changing its ecology and whatnot, they created a fictitious Carboniferous Mesotheliae spider, and put it in the Carboniferous, which it didn't exist. Mesotheliae is a real clade of spiders. Tarantulas are in Mesotheliae. The mouse spiders, all the spiders that you see where their fangs go down, the mygalomorphic spiders, are all related to the Mesotheliae clade. Modern or other spiders, true spiders, Arania, are like the web-building spiders, the huntsman spiders, and their jaws generally close like that. So instead of reshooting the scene with the new model, they decided to create a fictitious spider that there's no reason to believe that it exists at all, and include
spiders didn't evolve until significantly later too.
And they were small when they first evolved. They weren't massive. They were
after the Carboniferous. Insects you don't see large insects again. One of the big reasons why you can get insects this big during the Carboniferous is that their breathing, they don't have lungs or mechanical breathing like we do. They can't force air. Some of them, when they walk, it can move some air in and out, but they don't have lungs like other like tetrapods do, or even some fish do, like lungfish. So most of them have to rely on just diffusion, so the oxygen just has to seep through. So once you get to a certain size, the oxygen physically can't get through far enough, because they also don't have circulatory systems anything close to what we do. Some of them have fluid that moves around. There's some ants where when they walk, but it's nothing close to what we do. BrainBug can obviously add more detail if I've missed anything. So the Carboniferous, when you have all these giant trees and nothing yet has evolved to decay it, you have a much more oxygen-rich atmosphere, which means you can be bigger because there's more oxygen that can diffuse through. The Carboniferous kind of ends with a fairly decent drop in the oxygen level, and that means that you can no longer support all these giant creatures. Some of them are already starting to lose out to other vertebrate animals by the end of it anyway. The amphibians, some of the fish, if you're looking compared to the sea scorpions. That's probably one of the reasons they got so big, is that it was because competition from fish, and in the end they lost that. evolutionary arms race, because there were sea scorpions, but they didn't have the stingers that we think a lot of them did. A lot of them, like the one that we showed, it looks more like a flat tail, like
for swimming.
For swimming. Though some of these things were big, like 2-meter plus scorpions. Some of the ones towards the end were built like tanks, but a lot of them were almost like bottom feeders or like filter feeders. Some of them were hunters. It's quite a giant clade, but it later became spiders. You don't see them. So that was just one, because it's just an entirely fictitious creature that they added into the documentary. So the only thing that exists about it is the name.
Yeah,
and even then they show it with webs, don't they? And that didn't come to even way after the first sort of spiders appear.
It was a burrowing spider, and it had a burrow lined with web, I believe, that it lived in. It did not survive there's a event at the end of the episode that features this, that the mega arachne perishes because there was gas trapped underneath the lake or whatever, and a gas bubble burst. And
that's Walking with Beast. This one gets hit by lightning.
Oh yeah, and the oxygen in the air makes it
more prone for things to burn.
Yeah,
which was true. It does look like that the period ended with, or had a lot more forest fires and bushfires than most other times, because there is more oxygen, things burn more readily, and there was a lot more plant life, because, as I said, there was nothing that decayed it. Most of today's coal comes from the Carboniferous. It's where it gets its name, carbon bearing, because like a lot of our oil, like it comes from a time where you didn't have things that decayed, all this dead matter, so it just fell to the bottom of whatever environment. Particularly when you've got wetland environments like swamps, it's great for, once it gets covered a bit, for fossilization, and particularly in terms of forming.
There was no decomposers. Decomposers in the ecology. You shouldn't say no, but there weren't sufficient decomposers to break down, especially when we started getting more vascular plants that were harder to process chemically through the body, and you had to masticate them and things.
Yeah, one of the things that they do a really good job of with Walking with Dinosaurs and Monsters is making sure that the plant life is fairly accurate. Or at least their depiction overall is not too bad. Like they have a good job of making sure that flowers don't appear before flowers appear. They try and hide grass in the ones where they film before we expected grass, although we now know grass evolved a lot earlier than we thought. We thought it came after dinosaurs. Turns out, no, it didn't. There is some grass around because we found coprolites, so dinosaur waste matter that's been fossilized that seems to have some grass in it.
Not until the Cretaceous, though. So
yeah, it was still fairly late. So yeah, your typical Triassic and Jurassic style one. So T-Rex may have seen some grass, but your stegosaurs and your even earlier sauropods are definitely not going to see it. And
their teeth reflect that their environment did not have grass, because they don't have because they're not
grinding.
The cusp on the cusp on their teeth are very similar to like browsers. So we think that like sauropods were definitely eating like ferns and leaves like that, maybe even some like club mosses and that sort of nourishment, which makes sense for someone with such a large barrel body. And they probably ferment that vegetable matter in their stomach for days and days in order to properly get their nutrition out of it. I do wonder about sauropod coprolites, though. If we examined those, what will we find? We think they were seed dispersers, maybe eating some fruit.
Well, I mean, a lot of modern, more recent, so if you look at the large mammals, they were really good at seed dispersers. And that's why there's not really any large seeded plants left, because they relied on big herbivores to spread their seeds. One of the really good kind of evolutionary leftovers from all this is the avocado.
Avocado, yay!
Yeah, because they shouldn't exist, because their method of spreading relies on big herbivores to eat them, but
Giant
they all
ground
went
sloth.
extinct. Yeah, giant sloths. I think there's a few others too, weren't there? But the sloths, yeah. Oh, so there's some incredible sloths in the fossil record. Like that's almost an entire episode you could go through, chat for hours on.
Sloths are much cooler than what we have left today. They are so much cooler, so much more diverse. Xenosaurs in general are.
They could dig like 60-meter burrows. It's incredible. We're talking like several meters wide. You can walk into them like a cave. A few of them still exist.
That's why we have remains of a lot. There's a lot of vertebrates that we only know from the remains that were found in a sloth den that they were occupying, because they built, they dig those big burrows, and anything else that needs a burrow is going to say, hey, this burrow is already built, and go in there and live. And so we have all kinds of vertebrates that are known from these from their fossil remains found in those burrows. How do we even get on the topic of sloths? I don't even remember.
It was to do with the avocados.
Oh, yeah.
But the only reason they survived was humans got to them before they went extinct, because humans arrived just before the last of the big creatures seemed to have disappeared. So, yeah, the seeds there should not be that big. Though I do like, because the name avocado comes from the Aztec word for testicles, because that's what they look like, particularly when they're growing on a tree, which I think is quite funny that most people don't know that. So there you go, there's a bit of extra trivia.
And fun fact about dinosaurs, they did not have external testicles. So when you run into a creationist and they say dinosaurs were in the Bible, Behemoth was a dinosaur. Behemoth, the actual verse says the sinew of his stones, which refers to testicles. Behemoth was not a dinosaur.
It's likely an elephant. It was they were describing his parts that stick out. Because most dinosaurs and even modern birds don't have external appendages. Very few of them do. Ducks famously, but a lot of them have lost them. They may have had them and then they lost them again. But anyway, so here's one. Giant sloths went extinct only 10,000 years ago. Yes, but it's only about 10,000 years ago that humans made it to South America. I think our oldest evidence of it is about that
somewhere between like 12 and 8,000 years.
What I did find interesting, and I read it, and I really need to look into this further, is that it's possible that first humans to actually arrive in South America were Australian Aboriginals who had actually trekked across the ocean. There is some evidence to suggest that very small populations made it from Australia, which is just insane when you think about what we normally think of, but a lot of ocean travel.
They think there was definitely some interaction between Polynesian people and the Chilean cultures. They think that they had
and you can also see that within, say, the Olmecs and the Mayans. The Olmecs and the Mayans are the two big cultures from Central America that you can call ancient. The Aztecs and the Incas were not. They were medieval. They weren't around for very long either. They're only a few hundred years each before the Spanish, or 100 or 200 years each before the Spanish arrived. But it does look like some of those ancient cultures probably ran into some giant creatures. In fact, there was one giant creature that we thought went extinct. We knew when it went extinct, but we thought that humans hadn't arrived. But then we found a cave painting of a giant, I think it was a mammoth or a giant. It was like one of those. Sorry?
In South America?
I was in North America, sorry, I'm thinking, but in the Americas, where we found a cave painting of one of the megafauna that shows, I think it was an elephant relative, maybe. I got to double check this one. But the painting suggests that humans had actually reached the area well before we thought they had. It was at least a few thousand years, because we have a good idea of when this thing went extinct, because there's a decent fossil record of it. But it's just really cool how all this plays into each other. But yeah, a lot of the dinosaur things they do, that's something Walking with Dinosaurs gets wrong a lot, is they put dinosaurs in the wrong time. But the weird thing is they'll make the main characters and put them in the wrong time. And I'm like, just change the year.
Yeah, it's just changing that number on the screen. That's all you got to change. You don't got to change anything else about it. You just...
yeah, like the Liopleurodon which is a bit similar to the mosasaur. I'll get a picture of that one too. Is the other one that they get really wrong.
Yeah, and it is
Liopleurodon. This guy here, this big monster. He's too big. He's more than twice the size he should be. He's also out of place by a couple of like tens of millions of years. Plus, the only other predator they show that he feeds on at the beginning. So this guy is also. Oh, sorry, I keep clicking on the wrong. This guy here is also out of place, both temporally and geographically. He's in the wrong spot and the wrong time.
In the wrong habitat.
Yeah. But I think what they did is they were using models they had earlier. So Walking with Dinosaurs is awesome. They get a lot of things wrong, but a fair bit of it is excusable because a lot of our good dinosaur and fossil finds from these eras, because Liopleurodon's not a dinosaur, came after. So there's a few things that Walking with Dinosaurs speculated on that they got correct in a lot of cases. And like, say, with their pterosaur episode, when they do show a pterosaur, they do put a couple of like little spikes and fluff on it.
Yeah.
And because it was still really speculative at that time, and it turns out that it wasn't a bad thing. But yeah, there's a lot they also get wrong. But they do it better than most movies, though. But it is a documentary. Apart from adding in the occasional creature that just pretty much shouldn't exist.
I mean, it's definitely an effort. And we've had very few since Walking with Dinosaurs that have been quite as accurate for their time period and is well made and well done and have quite that production value. So I grew up on Walking with Dinosaurs, so I have a soft spot for it. Of course, now I look back at it and say, "Oh, that's bad. That doesn't look."
Oh, right. It's still one of my favorite documentary series ever.
Walking with Beasts is amazing too.
The Walking with, I haven't seen the Caveman, but I've seen Monsters, Beasts, and Dinosaurs, and I love them.
The Swimming with Sea Monsters is something completely different. It's got that Nigel Marvin in it, and he goes through the time periods to try to find the most dangerous seas or whatever, and he encounters a Dunkleosteus, another ancient animal that's often lumped together under dinosaurs, but it's actually a fish, a placoderm.
The armor ones with the giant like plates on their head that are basically giant can openers.
Dunkleosteus was huge, but they always depict it without lips and without soft tissue as well. So it's not necessarily being depicted accurately as either in that
these guys.
Yeah,
it's not quite like that. The bones probably would have been covered. You don't see creatures with too many external bones, do you? But I mean, if you just look at the skull, like.
I think these I may be wrong. Titan will correct me if I'm wrong. Titan's usually pretty on top of these things, but the Dunkleosteus had the predictive strongest bite force of any animal. I believe that was the case based on
at the time, yes, and I believe per centimeter, so for a given area, I think they still might. There's very little, I think, that can top them, if at all. The only things I can think of that get close are the crocodiles.
Yeah. That's like a bolt cutter of a jaw.
Yeah.
It was a solid.
But I do like the background to this picture, because the depiction there, so let me zoom in a bit for people, if I can enlarge it a little bit. That depiction there where they've kind of covered the head a bit, I think that's a little closer to what they should look like.
I like that, actually, where it's got lips and it's just, you can see its teeth because its mouth's open. But yeah, these guys were, I mean, you could really consider Dunkleosteus like the death nail for a lot of these large predatory arthropods that roam the seas.
The
placoderms, when they came on the scene, really drove the Eurypterids into very much into different niches and kind of broke them all up. That's why we see one moving on to land, which is our Mega Arachne, that is a Eurypterid as well. There's proof in DNA that humans were in America far longer than 10,000 years. Also, petroglyphs depicting megafauna. That's what you were talking about, the petroglyphs. I think that the time frame right now is it was at 25 to 18,000 years ago that humans arrived in North America.
Yeah, because I think the original numbers a while ago used to be 10,000 for South America, and obviously it took a while, so they arrived in North first. But I think it looks like it was because I know you're mentioning, John was mentioning 25,000 years. So yeah, I think it looks like we arrived there, at least in some numbers. But like most human migrations, it's not a single wave. It's generally multiple waves, and you get bigger numbers that come in later. And
the area
normally
that they
it's
were,
those bigger numbers that show up.
And the area that they were coming across froze over and thawed out and froze over and thawed out. You're talking about the late Cenozoic has been off and on. We're still in the same kind of cycle, off and on ice ages. So the glaciers would cover the Bering land bridge, and then they'd recede, and they'd cover it again and recede, and these little populations of humans continued to cross there, and they were still crossing there until the colonial era. We saw new populations moving from western, or sorry, not western, I guess it'd be eastern Russia to western Alaska, even up into the modern era. So this has still been going on with these migrations, and that's a really good example of how humans spread. Even, we want to say, Western society connected all the world, but really we were already connected long before that.
Yeah, and it's one of the kind of, if I'm going to go down any route of conspiracy, although this is not that conspiratorial, but it's the closest thing I'm going to say to a conspiracy, I think, is that I reckon that the Central and South American cultures did have some contact with the ancient Europeans, so the Romans and the Egyptians to some extent, but I don't think it was regular. I think it was more accidental, because there were ships that could make that journey or could survive an accidental journey. We know the Vikings also made the trip later. We know they did. But I reckon that there was probably some connection, but it wasn't regular. I don't think there was any regular trade or anything. I'm not saying that there was regular contact.
We need to get together again sometime and just do a stream on pre-Columbian Western contact.
Oh, I would love to, because the pre-Columbian America is one of my favorite areas of history, and I like my history almost as much as I like my science. I will not shut up on that. Not that I shut up on anything really, but I'd love to do that, because I just find it the cultures and how they developed in America is so fascinating. But yeah, there's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah, some of the things like the sweet potato, about the sweet potatoes on the that they found in West Coast, or on the West Coast, and like it was in a cave in Chile. Sweet potatoes, of course, being a crop of Southeast Asian descent. So we think that, but there is also the possibility that one got, that some sweet potatoes ended up in the sea somehow, and it got washed up that way.
It rafted over, because they'd last for a while at sea.
I think there was allegedly some chicken bones in South America too, but I don't know whatever came of that. But yeah, that's we could do a whole show on that. I could talk about that for hours.
Yes, to just point out that, the Younger Dryas was basically what happened at the end of what most people think of the Ice Ages. Technically, we're still in an ice age, because the definition of an ice age is permanent ice somewhere on the planet, generally at the poles, because, well, that's where you're going to find it. And because we have permanent ice there, although we'll see for how much longer at the rate we're going. As long as there is permanent year-round ice, we're in an ice age. Normally what people think of as an ice age is known as the glacial or interglacial periods. So when that ice spreads far below what is the Arctic Circle. And the Younger Dryas was just basically the end there. We had a fair bit of climate change, and that's where you start to see the last of the megafauna disappear. I know that humans often get blamed for that, but from my reading and from my guesses is that it wasn't one factor that ended it for the megafauna. Humans certainly didn't help, but the populations were probably already environmental pressures, and then with the arrival of humans that push those populations a little
there was an
closer to
ecological
extinction.
shift that was pushing organisms out of their old environments and into new environments to contend with animals that they never engaged with before. There is definitely human interference that drove that, and you can kind of see that punctuated by the fact that in areas where humans evolved, like Africa, and in our early evolution in the Indian subcontinent, the megafauna are fine. The megafauna, well, not fine. They're not fine now, and within the last couple hundred years, but they
didn't die out.
Yeah,
as soon as we got there.
They kept their megafauna longer, and they still have more megafauna there than we see in the rest of the world.
I mean, the Middle East is another good example because everyone thinks of that as just being kind of a desert, but there's a lot of the Middle East that's not. But there used to be, up until partway through the Roman Empire, there used to be elephants and tigers. Well, not quite tigers, but lions and elephants tigers. And all the big ones. Can't remember how far west they went.
Leopards,
but you have those North Africa as well. So above the Sahara Desert. But the Roman Empire, in their hunt for animals for arenas, basically wiped them out.
Oh, there was bears in Africa too. There's no bears left in Africa. There was a species of bear that lived in North Africa called an Atlas bear that they wiped out for arenas. Another animal that wiped out.
The Romans went. Oh, their arena sports were like, you think of gladiators, but no, why is that the only thing that gets shown in movies? They used to throw all sorts of animals in. The Circus Maximus, which sat next to the Colosseum or fairly close to it, but there's almost none of that left. Although parts of it between that and the Imperial Palace are left. If anyone has been to Rome, or it's still pretty cool. They used to stage entire battles where they would get like hundreds, if not thousands, of soldiers to reenact battles. They'd bring in elephants, and because they'd redo battles against Carthage, because it was the equivalent of cinema. But in the process of it, they basically wiped all these creatures out because they just captured them to extinction. Because it doesn't take a lot of pressure for these larger animals to disappear, because there's less of them. It takes longer for them to reproduce. So a small amount of pressure finishes them off, and that's what the Romans did. But the Romans changed a lot of things about Europe and the Middle East.
Until that era, lions lived up in Europe, up into Macedonia and what's northern Greece now, and the southern parts of Eastern Europe. Lions actually were indigenous to those regions until we wiped them out.
But it's also when you start to see what we think of as modern cows and modern farm animals appearing as well. Although that started a bit earlier, it's not a sudden process. And by sudden, I mean even 1,000 years is too quick.
And the auroch, that's another one that was wiped out by this early conquest.
They're trying to bring it back.
Animals. Yeah, I've seen
because you can backbreed animals where if you selectively breed for certain genetics, you can, let's say if you've got a small amount of the genetics left in modern descendants, particularly domestic ones, you can bring them back. So they're trying to bring back the aurochs, which is basically a muscly steroid-looking cow that was incredibly aggressive. Nothing like our modern cows. You couldn't farm them. They were too aggressive, which is why they didn't kind of last. We selectively bred the more docile versions that we have now. But it's just impressive just how all this ecology's changed over time, and the parts humans have played with. But yeah, it looks like it wasn't just humans arrive, we just suddenly hunt them to extinction. It's definitely not that simple, but we've played our part. But if you look at everywhere humans have gone, which is pretty much now the whole planet, on average, we wipe out about 80% of all the large mammals and about 40% of all animals. Still, in the last 50 years, we've lost nearly half of all our mammals on this planet. And about the same for fish and ocean creatures. And that's in the last 5 decades.
And unlike the younger Dryas, we don't have any doubt that humans are the impact here.
Yet I still meet people all the time that think that we're not doing damage. Oh, it's fine. It's like the plastic in the ocean. Oh, it's not that bad. I'm like, 2/3 of all the microparticles in the ocean now are plastic.
Yeah, have they seen the Pacific garbage patch? Maybe that would shake them up a little bit. Have you seen the Pacific garbage patch? It's disgusting.
And it comes from, and most, like 80% of that rubbish comes from 4 river systems. 2 in China, 1 in India, and 1 in America, I believe. I could be wrong about that, but it's about 4 individual rivers are responsible for like 80+% of all of the garbage in the Pacific Ocean. It's ridiculous. But it's, humans are. I've got a lot of faith in humans fixing our problems. We will solve these problems, but it's how big of a problem they'll become before we do so. We will do a lot of damage before we get around to fixing them. So, oh yes, don't forget the Denisovans. Is it Denisovans or Denisovans? I know it's Neanderthals, but I don't know how to.
I say Denisovans, but that may not be right.
And you say I still remember that SciShow episode where even Hank is like, I don't know which one it is. Just like,
well, I don't feel that you guys about us being indecisive.
Because I know Neanderthals are meant to be said that way because it's after the place they're found. But I got to look up how the Denisovans or Denisovans are meant to be said. But yeah, they're another human species that only went extinct relatively recently. But as of yet, we only know them from genetics. We do not have enough fossils of them to actually have them classified, which is why they don't have 2 names. So, like if you look at humans, it's Homo sapiens. You've got the genus and the species. You don't see that with Denisovans yet because we haven't got them officially classified. So, but it's where genetics predicts them. But there's a few adaptations and mutations that we have from them. It's a genetic code. Particularly, say, around the Himalayas that allow us to cope with the higher altitudes that definitely come from Denisovans. Neanderthals as well. We actually had a gene for blood clotting that made our blood clot more easily. That was only turned off more recently once modern medicine meant that getting a cut in the wild didn't mean you were going to bleed out. But we have that from them. We got a few nice ones. So but anyway, I think it's getting a little too down another rabbit hole there.
Yeah, well, another topic that we could the other humans, we could do a whole show on that too because the Red Deer Cave people. We know even less about them than the Denisovans, and then of course there's Homo floresiensis, which is
so my favorite, the actual hobbits.
Right, another fun topic. Homo heidelbergensis, Homo erectus.
There was another one in 2019 because I remember reading the actual Nature publication from it of a new Homo species described in the Philippines, and it matches closer to. I can't remember what it was called, but it was
something. Yeah,
and it was they basically said that this suggests that there were hominins leaving Africa well before we thought that happened, because they hold features that are much more indicative of our much earlier ancestors, and it just messes with that whole timeline of humans leaving Africa. And by humans, I don't mean modern humans, I mean the human genus and kind of family level, like it's the larger group, which are humans too. The Neanderthals are humans. Right. They wore makeup, they cared for each other, they had art, they had tools. They didn't do it to the same extent as us. The reason humans are the most successful animal on this planet is basically we're good at manipulating the environment, and unfortunately in times we're a bit too good at it. But yeah, that's how we survived. It's not because we're strong, it's not because we're tough, it's because we have the right type of brain, not necessarily a bigger brain, but the right type of it to do so. So if I was going to end on any note, it's as cool as all the dinosaurs things are, it's cool to look back in history, but we need to learn from it.
Right. Especially when it comes to extinction events and the one we're causing right now. They look at some of the data from previous extinction events and compare it to our current state on things such as the atmosphere and the the soil and ocean acidity, that all these factors that they compare modern where we are right now to extinction events, and some of those are showing some troubling correlation.
Yeah. Also, just to before we do finishing up on that topic, okay, so then, but that the probably Dennis is the part we're not having problems. It's after that. Where do we put the which parts do we enunciate? Because it's the Denisovans or Deniso. Oh, I guess Denisovans then might make a bit more sense because it's Dennis. Yeah. Denise. Yeah, okay.
I'm gonna say Denisovans. Yeah.
And so okay, I'll stick with that one for now until I get corrected by someone. But that's the thing. I don't mind being corrected because when I'm being corrected, it means I'm learning.
Yeah, I like to be wrong. Stuff. I've learned a whole bunch tonight, so thank you.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this show, but we are now over the 2-hour mark, and so I think we're going to have to finish up. But before we do you? I will give you a chance to shill in a moment, but before that, do you have any last kind of closing comments for today's show as a summary?
So, as we move forward in our reconstruction of these animals and their along with their habitat and their ecology, and we learn more and more about them, our understanding gets better. So this argument that it's always changing, the way this stuff is depicted is always changing. Why can't science make up its mind about this? It's that we're learning more. And the more we learn, we have to adjust our models. We have to adjust our reconstructions. We have to adjust the art that we make based on those reconstructions. And the rest of us is consumers in the areas of science, is consuming science information. We need to be willing to adapt and change to these updates that we are making to our depictions of these animals. That's what I want to what I want to finish with.
But that's how science goes. We get clearer pictures. It's like looking at a blurry image, and then slowly over time you're able to bring different parts of it into a better focus, but it's slow. So you might be like, oh, this blurry outline looks like this, but then when you get a clearer image, like, no, we were wrong. It's actually, so it's not that it's going backwards or anything or changing as well. It's just we're getting closer to having a good view of what the truth is.
It's like focusing in. Exactly. It's like honing in on the right answer.
And I like the dinosaurs because it's such a cool example of that for the most part is just everyone loves a good dinosaur, and that's why I like doing this, because it's like it's such a fun topic, and we get to have a look at movies and pop culture. I mean, what's better than to sit back and talk about dinosaurs in movies? I think it's a good topic. So
I never get tired of talking about dinosaurs. So anytime you have that topic come up over here, you invite BrainBug, okay?
Look, see, I'm a physicist, and normally I don't go near biology yet. I mean, you've heard everything I've spoken about today. So, yeah, I make an exception for biology when it comes to evolutionary history, all the way up until... Basically, if it happened before World War II, I like it, as long as it's not medieval. That's basically my summary of how everything goes. Though, that being said, do you have anything you want to quickly shill towards the end? Because you have been on here. So what have you got coming up?
Well, Fridays I have my Crypto Corner premiere every Friday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's U.S. Central Standard Time. And Saturdays I do Live from the Hive. Did Live from the Hive just this morning, 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. I think I see some of the familiar faces out there. I did name drop you on that stream, Titan. I know you couldn't make it this morning, but I did talk about you when we brought up bromeliads. In talking about botany. So I did name drop you there, but I will re-release that so you can go back and watch it sometime. But next Saturday, I got everything. I got good stuff laid out. So please come hang out with us. We always have fun in the Hive. If we do bug stuff, we do crypto stuff, we do creationist stuff. So if that's the kind of thing you're into and you're into watching that sort of content, head on over to the Hive and hit the subscribe button. Maybe check out some of the content and see what you think.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on, because Yeah, I had someone I could chat to about dinosaurs and animals. We even got into some bugs as well, which suits it suits your channel and you very, very well. So yes, I'll also say thank you to everyone who's been in the chat, whether you were here earlier, whether you're listening afterwards, or whether you're still here. For those who've watched the whole thing, I really appreciate the watch time. Of course, this is why I like doing science communication, is to get information out there to people. So if there's no one listening, it's not worth it. So you guys do make it worth it. I know that might sound cliche, but it's true. I'm still really excited because I love this topic. Thank you all. Thanks for coming. Again, thanks, BrainBug, for being here. It's been awesome.
Had a great time.
And, yes. And remember, everyone, I'm almost a doctor. And until next time, be like a proton and stay positive. Well, let me see if I can get the outro fixed.
Be kind and take care.
Yes. Was little. Oh no, wrong one. Here we go. There we go.